Imagine building your entire life, only to have one person tear it apart with a single word. Mark Dalton thought he could say whatever he wanted, until his words became the weapon that destroyed him. When the truth came out, it didn't just ruin his career. It obliterated his entire reputation, and that was just the beginning. Mornings in the studio were always chaotic, but for Mark Dalton, they were his playground. The 34-year-old host of the most unapologetically liberal talk show on air thrived on controversy. And that day, oh, he was ready to stir the pot. He adjusted his mic, threw a smirk at the camera, and kicked off his latest episode with his usual swagger. "All right, folks, let's talk about privilege," he began, leaning into the screen as if he were having a private chat with his viewers. "You know, the kind where you're handed a golden spoon the moment you're born, and the biggest struggle you face is deciding whether to vacation in the Hamptons or Aspen." The audience chuckled, some already guessing where he was headed. Mark wasn't just bold, he was surgical with his sarcasm. That's why people tuned in, right? To see who'd be next on his chopping block. But then he took it a step further. "Take Barron Trump, for example," he quipped, dragging out the syllables of the name. 19 years old and his biggest achievement? Existing. I mean, come on, if participation trophy were a person. The studio crew exchanged uneasy glances. Mark's jokes were sharp, but this time he was skating on thin ice. So ignoring the subtle tension in the room, he pushed forward. "Now, don't get me wrong," Mark continued, his voice dripping with mock concern. "I'm sure being born into that family comes with its own challenges, like dodging golf carts at Mar-a-Lago or pretending you're interested in policy meetings. But let's be real, there's not much else going on there, is there?" The joke landed with mixed results. Some viewers were laughing, his core audience who loved a good roast. But others? They were flooding the live chat with comments like, "Dude, this ain't it," and "Leave the kid alone." That should have been his cue to back off, but Mark wasn't done. He shifted his tone to something more conspiratorial, adding a spark of drama to his words. "And don't even get me started on those rumors. Oh, wait, you haven't heard them? Never mind. Wouldn't want to spill any tea that's not mine to pour." The tension in the studio was palpable now. A producer frantically waved at him from behind the camera, mouthing, "Move on." But Mark ignored it, flashing his signature grin instead. By the next morning, the internet was on fire. A clip of Mark's comments had gone viral, racking up millions of views within hours. Hashtags like #CancelMarkDalton and #ProtectBarron were trending. Even Mark's supporters, who usually reveled in his no-holds-barred style, were divided. Many argued that targeting a young man who'd stayed out of the spotlight was crossing the line. Meanwhile, others defended him, claiming he was simply calling out privilege. Barron Trump, who had been largely absent from public view, suddenly became the center of attention. Known for his reserved demeanor, he broke his silence with a rare Instagram post. Words hurt, but the truth heals. Short, simple, and devastatingly effective. The post blew up, attracting millions of likes and supportive comments. Back at the studio, Mark's bosses were scrambling. Sponsors were pulling their ads, citing the controversy as bad for business. Angry letters flooded the station's inbox, demanding that Mark face consequences. The tension boiled over in a closed-door meeting between Mark and the network's top brass. "We're getting crucified out there," the producer barked, slamming a stack of papers on the table. Mark, leaning back in his chair like he didn't have a care in the world, smirked. "So what? People love a good scandal. Let them talk. It's free publicity." "That's not the point, Mark," snapped the executive. "We're losing sponsors. Do you know how much revenue we've bled since yesterday?" Instead of apologizing, Mark doubled down. "Fine, let's spin it. Give me a special segment where I expose the Trumps for what they really are. Trust me, it'll be ratings gold." The room fell silent. The executive rubbed his temples in frustration before delivering the final blow. "You're suspended, effective immediately." Mark's cocky demeanor faltered for just a moment. "You can't be serious," he muttered. But they were. As Mark stormed out of the office, his phone buzzed with notifications. The fallout was far from over, and deep down, he knew it. But for now, he clung to his defiance, tweeting, "Truth hurts, doesn't it? If you can't handle the heat, stay out of my kitchen." What he didn't realize was that this wasn't just heat. This was a firestorm, and he was standing at the center of it. Mark Dalton leaned back in his oversized leather chair, scrolling through the endless flood of news articles and social media posts dissecting his suspension. To him, this wasn't a setback. It was a temporary storm he fully intended to ride out. "Give it a week," he muttered to himself, smirking at the headlines. "They'll be begging me to come back." Mark wasn't planning to apologize. Not now, not ever. Instead, he had a bold new plan: come back swinging with an even more provocative monologue. "The audience loves drama," he told his remaining assistant, who nodded nervously. "They want the truth, raw and unfiltered. That's exactly what I'll give them." But before he could launch his redemption arc, the internet had other plans. Late one evening, as Mark skimmed through his emails, his phone buzzed incessantly. Notifications piled up, faster than he could clear them. "What's going on now?" he grumbled, unlocking his screen. The answer hit him like a freight train. Someone had leaked private messages between Mark and a few producers. The screenshots painted an ugly picture, Mark bragging about knowing dirty secrets about the Trump family, mocking colleagues, and strategizing ways to stir the pot for maximum public outrage. The internet exploded. Comments flooded every platform. "Wow, this guy really thinks he's untouchable. So much for being independent. This is just manufactured chaos. What a fraud." The worst part? The leaked conversations revealed outright fabrications in his on-air rants. Stories Mark had framed as insider knowledge were exposed as baseless gossip. Former colleagues, emboldened by the chaos, began sharing their own experiences. A producer posted, "Working with Mark was like walking on eggshells. He thrived on tearing people down, on and off camera." Another added, "The arrogance was unbearable. He always thought he was the smartest person in the room." Mark's reputation wasn't just slipping, it was plummeting. By the next week, the studio parking lot was flooded with protesters. People waved signs that read, "Accountability now," and "No more lies." Mark's suspension wasn't enough for them. They wanted him fired for good. Meanwhile, the Trump family's legal team began assembling a defamation case. A spokesperson announced, "This is about more than protecting a name. It's about holding individuals accountable for reckless behavior." As if that wasn't enough, a mysterious video surfaced online. The grainy clip featured a masked figure claiming that Mark's vendetta against Barron wasn't just a reckless misstep, it was a calculated distraction. "He's trying to cover up his own skeletons," the voice said. "Mark Dalton isn't the champion of truth he pretends to be. He's been complicit in corporate scandals, and I have the receipts." The claim sent amateur sleuths into overdrive. Threads popped up dissecting Mark's history, his financial dealings, and his personal life. It didn't take long for them to find something real. Reports began circulating that Mark had been funneling payments from dubious sponsors, using his platform to push certain narratives for financial gain. The revelations were damning. News outlets ran with the story. Mark Dalton, the face of hypocrisy? Leaked documents tied talk show host to corporate manipulation. Even his most loyal fans began to turn. Online forums buzzed with debates. "I thought he was about speaking truth to power. Guess not." He's no different from the people he criticizes. Maybe worse. Mark tried to fight back, releasing a statement claiming he was the victim of a smear campaign. "They want to silence me because I'm not afraid to speak up," he wrote. But the damage was done. His words felt hollow, like desperate attempts to regain control of a narrative slipping through his fingers. His only remaining ally, the show's producer and a longtime friend, finally had enough. "I can't support this anymore," the producer told a journalist. "Mark has crossed too many lines, and I refuse to go down with him." Mark was officially alone, watching as the empire he had built crumbled around him. And for the first time, he wasn't sure if he could talk his way out of it. Mark Dalton walked into the courtroom with his head held high, dressed in a sleek suit that screamed, "I've got this." To him, this wasn't just a legal battle, it was his chance to spin the narrative. Cameras flashed as he made his way through the crowd, his confident smirk firmly in place. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The Trump family's legal team had brought out the big guns, and the courtroom was packed with journalists, critics, and curious onlookers. Mark's lawyer whispered something to him, but he barely listened. "Relax," he muttered, waving it off. "It's just theatrics." But as the trial unfolded, it became clear that this wasn't going to be the spectacle Mark had envisioned. The Trump team wasted no time laying out their case. They presented clips of Mark's now infamous broadcast, transcripts of his leaked messages, and testimonies from former colleagues. Each piece of evidence painted a damning picture. Mark wasn't just reckless. He was calculated, using his platform to manipulate public perception for personal gain. One particularly damaging moment came when an expert witness dissected the timeline of Mark's on-air statements, tying them directly to a rise in misinformation campaigns. This wasn't free speech, the lawyer argued. This was a deliberate attempt to spread falsehoods for attention and profit. Mark's defense tried to counter by claiming he was a victim of cancel culture, but the argument fell flat. The judge, unimpressed, leaned forward and said, "This case isn't about free speech, it's about accountability." Then came the final day of the trial. As the courtroom settled into silence, the doors swung open and in walked Barron Trump. The room collectively gasped. Barron, known for staying out of the limelight, had made his first public appearance in years. He took the stand with quiet confidence, his presence commanding the room. His words were measured, but they carried the weight of someone far older than his 19 years. "I've spent my life avoiding the spotlight," he began, "but when someone uses their voice to hurt others, to tear them down for sport, that's not okay." Barron spoke about how Mark's words had impacted him, not just as an individual, but as someone constantly judged by association. His closing statement left the room in stunned silence. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because truth matters, words matter, and people need to understand that." The jury deliberated for only a few hours before returning with their decision. The court ruled in favor of the Trump family, ordering Mark to pay a hefty fine for defamation and issue a public apology. As the judge read the verdict, Mark's face betrayed the first flicker of doubt. His confidence crumbled as he realized the extent of the damage he had inflicted, not just on others, but on himself. The media swarmed him outside the courthouse, but this time, there were no clever comebacks, no smug remarks, just silence. The fallout was swift and brutal. Sponsors cut all ties, his show was officially canceled, and even his closest allies distanced themselves. Mark's once loyal fan base vanished, replaced by critics who dissected his downfall in real time. Meanwhile, Barron's brief appearance in court had a ripple effect. Inspired by the support he received, he announced the launch of a nonprofit aimed at helping young people combat online harassment. The move cemented his image as a poised and compassionate figure, a stark contrast to Mark's tarnished legacy. Mark's final act was a single tweet: "I was a victim of the system." It was a desperate attempt to regain some semblance of control, but it fell on deaf ears. The world had moved on, and Mark Dalton was now just another cautionary tale. In the end, his story served as a powerful reminder. Words have consequences, and no one is untouchable when the truth comes to light. What would you have done in Mark's place? Do you think he could have handled things differently, or was his downfall inevitable? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you or someone you know ever faced a situation where words had unexpected consequences? Let us know. Your experiences matter. If you enjoyed this story, give it a like and share it with others who might find it meaningful. Remember, this isn't just entertainment. It's a reflection on accountability, responsibility, and the power of words. This story was created to highlight important issues and inspire positive change in the world. Together, we can make a difference. Your voice matters.